guys, and welcome back to another video on my channel. It has been a while again since I made a video. Honestly, I don't really have much of an excuse. Mercury was in retrograde, and to be honest with you, it really hit me like a freaking truck. I have not been having a great time. But anyways, today I'm back with another video, and today we are going to be talking about an unsolved missing person who was found. You'll see what we're talking about when we get into it. This case is quite popular, but I have been requested to talk about this case more than once. So even though I have seen it several times online, I figured that I would cover it anyways and maybe give you guys some new information or just refresh your mind about this case. So with that all being said, let's get right into today's video. Lisanne Froon was born on September 24th, 1991, and Kris was born on August 9th, 1992, making Lisanne 22 at the time and Kris 21. The two girls were Dutch students. Lisanne was said to be a really optimistic and intelligent girl, and another thing that was heavily noted about her was that she loved playing volleyball. Kris was described as being a very creative and responsible girl, with both girls growing up in Amerfoot. Two girls, Lisanne and Kris, both worked in a cafe together, and that is really how they met, and they became pretty close. And while working at this cafe, that is when they decided that both of them wanted to take a 6-week trip to Panama. So after saving up for a little bit of time, the girls then headed out again for their 6-week trip to Panama on March 15th, 2014. The two girls really took the vacation aspect and were really just traveling around Panama and sightseeing and doing all of that stuff that you do when you're on vacation for the first 2 weeks while they were in Panama. Then on March 29th, they arrived at Bonquet, which is where they planned on staying for a month. They had a family that they would be staying with, and while staying in this area, they would be volunteering and helping with the children in the area and kind of giving back to the community, and that was what they had planned to do for the rest of their trip. All had been going well and as planned for the girls when they decided that on April 1st they were going to go for a hike. They left the house that they'd been staying at around 11, and that is when they headed out to do this hike that they were planning on doing. Now this in itself at first glance doesn't seem too odd. The girls are on vacation, and I feel like it's a very normal thing to, want to go on a hike, want to go see some of the area. But what makes this so odd is that the girls had actually booked a tour with a tour guide for the following day at 8 a.m. for what I believed would have been the exact same hike that they were going on that day. Why would you need to go on the hike twice, and why would you want to go on it before you go on it with the tour guide? Like, I understand if you go on it with the tour guide, you feel comfortable with the hike and you want to go on it again, so then you go by yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that kind of is how I feel about the situation, but that just makes the entire thing that much more strange. The girls again had left the host house at around 11. Then they were seen at a cafe where I guess they had stopped for lunch with these two Dutch men that they had met and kind of been hanging out with while they were on this vacation. They then split from those two Dutch men and headed on this hike that they had planned on going that day. And they took along with them the host family's dog on their little adventure that they were going on. What really set alarms in for the host family that day was on the exact same day, April 1st, in the evening, the host family's dog returned back home without the girls, and there was no sign that the girls had even started coming home. They just hadn't seen them, and that really set an alarm bells, because why would the dog come home without the girls, and why would the girls have been out so late anyways? It just didn't make sense. They left at 11, it was now nighttime, and they still hadn't returned home, but the dog again did. This situation had worried the host family enough that they had reached out to Lisanne's mother, asking if she had been in contact with either of the girls that day and if she had any idea where they were. At this point, Lisanne's mother did send a text message to both of the girls, I believe, but she never ended up receiving a reply for either of the girls. The host family was pretty worried, but it was too early on to actually do anything. The girls had gone for a hike that day, and although they never came home and it was pretty strange that the dog had come home without the girls on his own accord, it didn't seem that strange, I guess. The girls were on vacation, they hadn't been gone that long. Maybe they had gone for this hike and then decided they wanted to go for drinks and ended up just staying out too late, or they decided, they wanted to meet up with some other people or something along those lines. They were were again on vacation, so this doesn't seem like something that is too out of the ordinary, but the host family was pretty worried because of the entire situation with the dog. They thought that if the girls had come back and decided to do something else, they would have came to the home, brought the dog back, and informed the family of what they were going to do next, but of course it wasn't really any of their business. The girls were full-grown adults, and if they wanted to, go party after this hike or whatever, it really wasn't the host family's business. Like I briefly mentioned already, the girls did have a tour guide appointment kind of thing booked the next day where a tour guide was going to come and meet with them and take them on this hike. But at 8 a.m. on April 2nd, when they didn't arrive to meet the tour guide, that is when red alarm bells really started to go off for the host family, who was already worried, as well as the tour guide. This is when the tour guide also took it upon himself to reach out to Lisanne's mother. He texted her just asking if she had any idea where her daughter was, and that is when Lisanne's mother texted the tour guide back and said, "Yeah, my daughter's in Panama." The tour guide as well as the host family contacted the police to report the girls missing around 7:30 p.m. Then on April 3rd at 8 a.m., that is when a very small search group was put together. It was just made up of mostly the locals and the police, and they headed out to look for the girls, but they found absolutely zero sign of either one of the girls. By April 6th, both Lisanne and Kris's family had flown in to look for the girls, and there were also Dutch special units that had flown in to search for the girls, and at this point the search was becoming much more intense, and the search ended up lasting for a total of 10 days. But over the entire 10 days that this search was held up, absolutely zero sign of either of the girls was ever found, which is very, very odd because obviously the girls were hiking in that area, so you would think that they would find some sign of them, but they found, again, absolutely nothing. Then on June 14th, 2014, a local couple found Lisanne's backpack. It was found along the Central Divide, which was near kind of like the path that the girls would have been hiking on, or the trail that the girls would have been hiking on, but it wasn't anywhere near where the girls would have been. I know that comes and sounds a little bit confusing. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Like, the girls would have been at one end of this trail, and her backpack, Lisanne's backpack, was found at the complete other end of this trail, very, very far from where the girls would have been if they were hiking in the area that they said they were hiking in. The bag was discovered. That is when the woman brought it into police immediately, and she said that she had found the bag in the riverbank in the Alto Romero, and that she was 100% sure that the bag had not been there the day before. Inside of this backpack were all of the belongings that the girls had taken with them on the hike. Both of the girls' cell phones were in there, as well as the camera that they'd been using to take photos while they were on this trip. And something to note here is that all of the items that were within Lisanne's backpack were in extremely good condition. They didn't look as if they had been in the jungle for the last 3 months. Because both of the girls' cell phones were discovered inside of Lisanne's backpack, the police obviously started to really look into the phone records and the phones just to kind of see if they could have any link between the cell phones and where the girls were, or what could have possibly happened to them. But looking through the girls' call records and everything like that, it was discovered that for over the span of 2 days, both of the girls had been trying to call emergency services from the cell phone, starting just 2 hours after the girls had headed out for their hike that day. Now, none of these calls had gone through except for one, which only lasted about 1 second. And that was obviously because the girls were in the jungle and they did not have any cell service. It was discovered that Lisanne's phone had died on April 5th at 5 p.m. and Kris's phone remained alive after this, but was turned on and off several different times. And then on April 6th, the phone was turned on and the passcode was entered several times incorrectly. And after this, the phone was never unlocked again. It was then determined that Kris's phone had been turned on April 11th at 10:51 a.m. and then it was turned off an hour later, and that was the last time Kris's phone had ever been turned on. And inside the backpack was also the camera that the girls had been using to take photos while they were on this trip. Now, many of the photos that were found on this camera were just normal vacation pictures, but some of the photos that were found that were taken after the girls had gone missing were very strange. April 8th, there were 90 photos taken on this camera between the times of 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. Now, these photos were all taken 2 minutes apart, but nobody is quite sure what these photos were taken for, what the purpose of these photos were, and they were all pretty blurry and you can't really make out what exactly is going on, who's taking the photo, and what the photo is supposed to be of. I'll definitely include some of the pictures in here so you guys can kind of see what I mean, but they are just very strange. Some people think that they were taking these photos to use the flash as kind of like a flashlight, which I guess does make sense, but it just is a little bit strange, especially how frequently the photos were taken and how many of them were taken at that time. The photos that was discovered on this camera that had been taken at this time was very visibly of Kris, and this photo in particular was quite alarming because in the photo you can clearly see that Kris has some kind of injury to her temple. After discovering the backpack, they started searching the area where the bag was found. And during this search, that's when they found Kris's shorts that were folded up really nice and neatly, just sitting on a rock. Another insane thing was 2 months after they found the backpack, they found a boot, and inside of this boot was a full foot. And close to that, they found a pelvic bone, which was discovered to belong to Kris, and then 33 more bones, which belonged to Lisanne. And Kris were found in the same area, but they were spaced out like a decent amount from one another. Once they found the girls' bones, they didn't find any sign that any animals had gotten to the bones, and it was also discovered that Kris's bones had been bleached with lime or sulfur. Now, that isn't something that would have been found in the soil in that area, so that is pretty strange, especially given the fact that Lisanne's bones were not bleached. 8 of the bones that had been discovered had been belonging to Lisanne. And what seems to be very strange about this, or what stood out as strange to me, is that Lisanne's bones that were discovered did have some flesh still remaining on them, whereas it appeared as if Kris's bones had almost been like cleaned. Again, when they found Kris's bones, there was evidence that her bones had been bleached. Now, whether that is by natural causes or something else obviously remains completely unknown. Another thing just to note again here is that the area where the girls' bones were discovered was extremely far from the girls' starting point of their hike. So the fact that they had made it that far was extremely alarming because the girls would have had no reason to have been in the area where they had been discovered. Some of the experts who have looked into this case believe that the girls could have been, for whatever reason, targeted and attacked by the Mexican cartel. Now, that doesn't really make too much sense because why would the girls be attacked or targeted by the Mexican cartel? But what does seem to be evident here is that it is said that the cartel does bleach their victims' bones, and again, Kris's bones had been bleached, but if that was the case, why were Kris's bones bleached and Lisanne's not? Another group of people who have really looked into this case then believe that the girls had just succumbed to the elements. Now, that does sound a little bit, I guess I want to say far-fetched, but honestly, after looking into it, I don't think that this theory specifically is too far-fetched. It is said that it was raining on the night that the girls had gone missing. They didn't have very much food. They didn't have very much water left after they had gone missing because they only initially planned on being out for a couple hours. And it is said that the trail that they were hiking on was extremely easy to get lost. Like, if they just wandered off the trail even a little bit, it would have been very understandable and very easy to get lost. Now, obviously, there's other ways that Kris's bones could have gotten bleached that would have been natural, but to me, just a lot of the things in this case don't add up, and I feel like even like the answers that are given to us and the theories that are given to us still just don't sit well with me. I still don't feel comfortable agreeing that, oh, I think this was from natural causes, or oh, I think they were murdered, because honestly, in this specific case, I have absolutely no idea. My heart sincerely goes out to the families of both of the girls and the loved ones of both of the girls. This case is absolutely so tragic, and the fact that it doesn't seem like we are ever going to get any concrete answers in this case is just absolutely heartbreaking. But guys, that is going to be all for today's video. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below what you'd like to see in my future videos. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!